This video is about sum and difference identities part 2, and we need to verify that this statement is true. So it is like a proof, and if you notice cosine of quantity pi over 2 minus x, pi over 2 is like alpha and beta is x. So we need to use cosine of quantity alpha minus beta. And what is that? Well, cosine of quantity alpha minus beta is cosine alpha cosine beta plus sine alpha sine beta. So since alpha is pi over 2, it's going to be cosine of pi over 2 and cosine of x plus sine of pi over 2 and sine of x. And what is cosine of pi over 2? Is 0. And 0 times cosine x is 0. What is sine of pi over 2? That's 1. And 1 times sine x is sine x. Therefore, we just proved that cosine of cosine of pi over 2 minus x is sine of x. Let's look at another example. We have cosecant of quantity pi over 2 minus theta equals secant theta. So let's prove these two statements, these two sides are equal to each other. So you know that cosecant is the same thing as 1 over sine. So it's going to be 1 over sine quantity pi over 2 minus theta. Okay, now what is sine of quantity alpha minus beta? Well, that's going to be sine of alpha cosine beta minus cosine alpha sine beta. So it will be 1 over. Now the alpha is pi over 2 and beta is theta. So it's going to be sine of pi over 2 cosine of theta minus cosine of pi over 2 and sine of theta. What is sine of pi over 2? That's 1. And 1 times cosine theta is cosine theta. What is cosine of pi over 2? It's going to be 0. And 0 times sine theta is 0. So you're going to end up with 1 over cosine theta. And what is 1 over cosine theta? Well, that is secant theta. And that's what we have to show. Now let's prove cosine of quantity 360 degree minus theta is cosine theta. Well, in order to prove this identity, we need to know that alpha is 360 and beta is theta. And also we need to know that cosine of quantity alpha minus beta is cosine alpha cosine beta plus sine alpha and sine beta. So let's plug it in and see what happens. So cosine of 360 minus theta will be cosine of 360 cosine of theta plus sine of 360 sine of theta. What is cosine of 360? Well, that's same thing as cosine of 0, because 0 and 360 are coterminal. So here's 0. If you go 360, you end up where 0 is. So cosine of 360 is the same thing as cosine of 0. And what is cosine of 0? It's 1. So 1 times cosine theta is cosine theta. What about sine 360? Sine 360 is the same thing as sine of 0, because 0 and 360 are coterminal angles. And 0 times sine theta will be 0. So we proved that this is equal to cosine of theta. Okay, let's try to prove sine of quantity pi over 2 plus x is cosine x. So again, the alpha, we need to identify alpha and beta. Alpha is pi over 2, and beta is x. And we need to know what sine of quantity of alpha plus beta is. Well, that's going to be sine of alpha cosine of beta plus cosine of alpha and sine of beta. So sine of quantity pi over 2 plus x is the same thing as sine of pi over 2 cosine of x plus cosine of pi over 2 and sine of x. What is sine of pi over 2? It's 1. So 1 times cosine x is cosine x. What is cosine of pi over 2? 0. 0 times sine x is 0. So we prove that this is equal to cosine x.